Now we talk a lot here on the channel about triathlon, but what about their sibling, the duathlon? The format of run, bike, run can be quite appealing to cyclists and runners, maybe just wanting to try their hand at something multi-sport, even to swimmers, maybe just wanting to do something completely different, and to triathletes, perhaps just wanting a little bit of focus over the off-season or the winter. Whatever your reason is, today I'm here to help you with some advice on how to prepare for a duathlon. Why do duathlon, I hear you say? It's not a race if it doesn't start with a swim or contain 3 different disciplines, etc, etc. Well, even if your main focus is triathlons, duathlon can be a great and a fun way of mixing your training up, particularly over the off-season when perhaps there aren't so many triathlons going on because perhaps it's too cold to do the open water part of the triathlon, in which case duathlon serve as a very good and quite a nice way to get that competitive outlet. Gives you a bit of focus and also allows you to practice some of your tactics and strategies ahead of the triathlon season. But then also, if you're a beginner and maybe wanting to progress to triathlons, then duathlons can be a really nice introduction. Obviously 2 disciplines is a lot less scary than 3 disciplines and therefore can serve as a very nice introduction to this world of multi-sport. And then there's nothing wrong if you just don't like swimming. Duathlon does not contain swimming, and therefore if you just want to do duathlons and that's your end goal, that's absolutely fine. Now you may be tempted to think that duathlon is completely different to triathlon and therefore it requires a very different training regime. Well, in reality, it's really not the case. You can actually perform very well off a normal, ordinary triathlon training program. That being said, there may be a few things or tweaks you might want to add and change to your training just to make sure that you don't get caught out. The first of which being preparing to run before the bike. I know that might sound odd, but as triathletes, we quite often practice running off the bike in what we call brick sessions. But there's something quite unique about doing a hard run and then a bike with tired legs and then expecting our legs to work again on that final run. We're expecting quite a lot of our legs. So my suggestion to you would be setting your bike up on an indoor trainer, finding a little loop outside that you can run on, starting off with that run route, jumping straight in onto the indoor trainer and then heading back out onto the run. You can repeat that through multiple times to really get that sensation and feeling. And if you're really lucky, you can do it all outside if you've got a nice quiet loop or it's good weather, or all inside if you've got a treadmill. And that should really get you used to that feeling of doing a hard run into a bike and running off. And most of that is actually dealing with the fatigue in your legs and learning how to run off with that fatigue, all of which will be beneficial and transfer over into triathlon too. And secondly, duathlons are quite often used as a bit of an alternative to triathlons, particularly during the off-season, as I mentioned before. But if you're really looking to perform well in these duathlons, then you want to be including some race-specific training to prepare yourself better for the event. Now in the off-season, if we're focusing on triathlons, then we quite often end up doing base training at that time of the year. That can end up feeling and being quite monotonous. So actually including some of this race-specific training in at this time of year, it's not only going to prepare us better for the duathlons, it's also just going to mix things up for us. And finally, you definitely want to be practicing your transitions. Whatever strategy or technique you go for, it's really important that you at least do one session where you just go through it over and over again and go through the motions that you're really well prepared. There's so many good triathletes out there that don't do this and they mess it up quite catastrophically. Now in duathlons, we obviously run first and then run at the end, and that may mean that you're using the same pair of shoes for both the first run and that final run. So that needs some practice, but we'll go into that a little bit later on. And finally, given that duathlons quite often take place over the wintry months, they can be in less than ideal conditions, quite cold and nippy. You may want to go with some warmer gear for before, maybe even during and after the event, because there is nothing worse than being borderline hypothermic at the start of a duathlon and then not really warming up until about 100 meters before the finish and then getting cold again. I mean, you can wear things like base layers underneath your tri-suit. I've done that a lot before. You can wear gloves, maybe even a hat. You can take a few things actually off if you get too hot during the race. You can drop them off in T1 or T2. But regardless of the result, whether it does help you improve your performance or not, it's going to make it a lot more enjoyable. Okay, but what pro tips have I got for you? Well, one rather important detail that I've touched on but haven't really gone into yet, and I really do need to, is your running shoes. A lot of people wear the same set of running shoes for the first run and the second run. That's fine. The idea being that you take off the running shoes in T1, place them down carefully, and then hopefully they'll be able to slip them on quite quickly in T2. But if you really want to kick your duathlon season off with a bang, why not go ready with 2 sets of running shoes? One set for the first run, and then a second set up perfectly in T2 so that you can slip it on nice and quickly, and there's no issues with getting the tongue hooked under or anything like that. And then we've got your socks. Now hear me out on this one, I know it sounds quite odd. In triathlon, we quite often don't wear socks, other than maybe for some long distance events and as we go on to the run. But in duathlon, I really would actually recommend you wear socks. It just gives you that extra layer of protection on your feet as you're jumping on and off of the bike. But if you're doing flying mounts and dismounts, something that can provide the spectators with quite a lot of amusement is your socks sticking to the Velcro on your bike shoes or triathlon shoes. I'm talking from experience here. So all I do is recommend you go out and just practice doing your transitions with the socks that you're hoping to wear. If you do run into issues, maybe try out some different socks or another method. And then finally, moving on from that, there's the option of actually doing the whole race in your running shoes. You don't see this so often, and actually it's quite hard to come by the pedals that you need for it. They're called pyro pedals. It's a solid platform, so when you come off that first run, you can quickly jump onto your bike, place your feet onto these solid platforms, and they hook them in, and then jump off the bike and run straight off. But I'll be honest, this is really for the pointy end of racing, for saving those 1 or 2 seconds through transition. Well, I hope you have enjoyed today's video. If you have, hit that thumbs up button and give this video a like. And if you'd like to see more from GTN and follow us on social media, you can do that now.